At least 22 people have been injured after a bus crashed in Turkey's central province. The bus was said to be carrying a group of Japanese tourists who were on their way to Cappadocia. According to authorities, the bus toppled on its side after the driver lost control of the steering wheel. One person sustained serious injuries, and those injured have now been taken to hospital. Here in Nigeria, to the sad incidents that happened in Jigawa State, the death toll from that tank explosion has risen to 153, with 100 others receiving treatment in various hospitals. The disaster was triggered by residents who had rushed to scoop petrol from the tanker, which overturned and later exploded in Majia town in Taura local government area of the state. Vice President Kashim Shettima has called for a comprehensive review of fuel transportation safety protocols across Nigeria, sending a condolence message to the families of the victims.
At 11:45 p.m., a petrol tanker destined for Yobe State after taking off from Kano ends its journey in Majia town in Taura local government area of Jigawa State, spilling its volatile content. Residents sadly do not heed to the constant warning of not scooping fuel in situations like this. The lure of profiting from petrol results in a horrendous explosion. It's a visit that a Jigawa governor would rather not embark on, but he is here and promises to pick the bills of the injured.
Those in the hospital, the government will take full responsibility of their medical bills. Apart from the secondary facilities we have in the state, we have also make arrangement with the tertiary facilities, Amini Kano Teaching Hospital, Federal Medical Center, Brununkudu, and Federal Medical Center, Unguru. For those that are in Hadeja General Hospital, they have a referral center at Federal Medical Center, Unguru. And for those that are in Jahun, they have a referral place at Federal Medical Center Brununkudu, and for those in Ringium General Hospital, they will be referred to Kano Teaching Hospitals.
Chairman of the local government and NEMA at the burial noted that there will be need for sensitization in communities to keep people away from petrol tanker accidents.
One trailer fact and fall. The petrol had been fleeing in the drainage. The people in that area came out to carry the fuel, maybe to sell whatever they want to do. The fuel now catch fire, and we have the loss of 147 people right now. We have almost 89 in the hospital. They are hospitalized. Right now, I'm receiving a call that 3 of them died.
A lot of sensitization has been going on in Nigeria that people should avoid rushing into an accident vehicle like that. A big a tanker that is carrying petrol to be scooping oil. So there is a lot of sensitization about that, but people refuse to heed to advice. That is one of the reasons this calamity happened.
Locals dig the grounds to bury the charred bodies, an unpleasant but necessary task. Members of the community narrate the ordeal and count their losses as some patients have been transferred to Aminu Kano Teaching Hospital. This is yet another avoidable carnage, which leads to the question of how to ensure that Nigerians are sufficiently sensitized on the grave danger of scooping fuel when accidents like this occur.
Our correspondent, Nanchin Vincent, is at one of the hospitals where victims of the explosion are being treated. Nanchin, thank you for joining us on The World Today. So what have you seen and heard since arriving at the hospital?
Yes, the hospital here has about 11 patients, and the place has been quite very, very sad. Everybody just seems to be very quiet here. The ward, I think all of them here on admission are from the ages of 19 to 25, which is their youth, and it's pretty sad here. The hospital is actually very quiet. Patients are, relatives of patients are coming in and going out. Very, very sad indeed.
Well, it's been a little more than 24 hours since this incident happened. Understandably, there's a sense of grief at the moment. But what else have you observed about people's reaction to what happened? Do they understand the danger in doing this?
Yes, speaking to others around here at the hospital, they felt that some of them actually are ignorant of the fact that whenever there's an accident of this sort, people should not go to scoop field, you know, and others are feeling that because some of them said that those who went and scooped this field and went scot-free. And so everybody was trying to get their own portion of scooping this field. So, I mean, everybody is just feeling that there's still more to be done when it comes to sensitizing people. This was a local community, a rural area, where so many of them do not have this knowledge that we don't have to go scooping fuel whenever a petrol tanker falls.
And there's also been a mass burial immediately after that incident. You can talk to us more about the whole event after that incident on the burial.
It was really, really fascinating. I was there yesterday at Magia in Tara local government area. It's quite a distance from here, where I'm here in Jutse. We met with the chairman of the local government, the NEMA officials, excuse me, the district head also of that community. And it was really sad. 147 persons were buried. That was really huge. And everyone was just quiet. Every family in that community was affected. Everyone had a loss in their families. In fact, we spoke to one of the family members who said that all of her siblings were all buried yesterday. It was really a sad event in one graveyard, a mass burial. You could see clothes around, some even skins of burnt around and being carried here and there. It was really a pleasant sight yesterday. It was really a very sad mood for the people of Magia community.
It's indeed unimaginable.
However, I think more bodies were brought in. I think about five. I think around 5 bodies were brought in afterwards. Yeah.
All right, we've also reported that Vice President Kashim Shettima called for a comprehensive review of fuel transportation and safety protocols across the country. Well, that is a solution for the long term. But what has the state government and other officials in the state, Jigawa State, said about the immediate remedies, something to prevent a recurrence of this incident? I know you've talked about sensitization, but what is the government saying they can do immediately?
Yes, the government has not really said that they have to do anything immediately. The government has just been focused on ensuring that those in the hospital receive the best treatment so that they can be up on their feet again. And the government is just religious leaders, you know, and community leaders to come together and ensure that there's a lot of sensitization. You know, with Shettima's, the vice president, saying that something has to be done immediately. Nothing has been done immediately so far. It's just that the governor right now is focused on ensuring that those in the hospital get back on their feet. But they are putting everything together to make sure that there is intensive sensitization for especially those in the rural community to understand the dangers of what has just happened.
Thank you very much. Correspondent Nanchin Vincent, thank you for giving us updates from the sad event in Jigawa State. To other stories outside our shores, members of the European Union and world leaders are attending a 3-day summit in Brussels. Among those attending the meeting are Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, EU Commission President Ursula von der Leyen, European Council President Charles Michel, German Chancellor Olaf Scholz, French President Emmanuel Macron, among others. Support for Ukraine's victory plan is top on the agenda, as well as a call for ceasefire and de-escalation of hostilities in the Middle East. The summit is also addressing issues of migration as members hope to find ways to tighten the bloc's policies on migrants and asylum seekers. Meanwhile, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky wasted no time to present his victory plan to the European Union, pitching the proposal as saying that it could end the war with Russia by the year 2025. On Wednesday, Mr. Zelensky unveiled the plan to the Ukrainian parliament. He also presented the 5-point blueprint to top Western leaders, including U.S. President Joe Biden, Vice President Kamala Harris, and former President Donald Trump. Mr. Zelensky asked the EU to help bring his victory plan to life, as he calls it the pathway to peace between his country and Russia. He called for more military aid to help fight Russia's aggression. That's green light for Ukraine. And NATO General Mark Rutte has said that it will be a member of the bloc in the future. He also said the bloc will continue to support Ukraine for the long haul and wants to be in position of strength to see President Zelensky start talks with Russia. Mr. Zelensky's plan contains requests that Ukraine's allies have so far declined to grant, just as a call for an invitation to join the U.S.-led NATO military alliance and the permission to use Western weapons to strike deep inside Russia.
In the future, NATO will have, as a 32 or 34th member, we will have Ukraine. At the moment, it seems that it will be Ukraine as number 33, but maybe somebody else pops in front of him. But Ukraine will be a member of NATO in the future. That is what we decided in Washington. So the question is then about the timeline. We are in this, if necessary, for the long haul. And obviously, we want to be in a place where Zelensky and Ukraine, from a position of strength, is able to start talks with Russia. But till that moment comes, he can count on continuing support, and Putin cannot count on us letting go of that support. Well, all evidence is that Belarus, that Minsk, is supporting Russia in the war effort with infrastructure, with territory, and at a cost for your population, for the Belarusian population. I mean, Belarus clearly is not doing this from a position of strength. And that means that it is hurting the country. It's not helping you, and it is helping and supporting Putin in the war effort against Ukraine, and this has got to stop.
And Latvian Defense Minister Andris Kord has said he is giving his support for President Zelensky's victory plan, saying that Kiev must triumph against Russian aggression. Meanwhile, British Defense Minister John Haley called for more pressure on Russia so that Ukraine can come out victorious.
We see that there are also the necessity to upgrade air policing to air defense mission, that it's not just about dealing with Russian jet fighters, but also, as we see, with such objects as armed drones. We will see also the more detailed plan, but we support the victory plan. We believe that Ukraine must have victory against aggressor country. It is for all of us important. It is about the wider repercussions, implications. If we don't invest in supporting Ukraine as much as we can, as long as it takes right now, of course, the costs will be higher.
We, as Ukraine supporters, must do everything we can to step up our support for Ukraine in the weeks and months ahead, to put more pressure on Russia, to ensure that Ukraine can prevail, because the defense of Europe starts in Ukraine. They're fighting for the same values and same beliefs and same freedoms that we prize, and we owe them that duty to stand with them for as long as it takes.
More reactions now. Lithuanian president is already saying the victory plan presents measures to Western and European society could not achieve. President Zelensky had repeatedly asked his country to use Western long-range weapon to strike deep into Russia, a request that was denied by the West. The Lithuanian president called for the need to reach an agreement regarding Ukraine's membership to NATO.
If I look at this plan, I see the measures, the decisions we, the Western societies, we are not able to deliver in the last months and even years. First of all, about the invitation to NATO. I remember Vilnius NATO summit, I remember Washington NATO summit. We could not reach the consensus. And this is very important that we reach the consensus, because otherwise it will be not possible to get this decision. Second point of the Zelensky's plan is permission to target military facilities on the soil of Russia. Again, we are not able to deliver, we are not able to take the decision and to let them implement poorly defensive, actually, operation, because this targeting means not attacking Russia. This targeting means reducing the power to attack from Russian side, reducing Russia's offensive potential. The third or the third point of President Zelensky's plan is about delivery of some very concrete types of military equipment, long-range missiles and so on, etc. And again, we are hesitating. So nothing new, actually, in this plan, and I do not see any big issues put on the table. Just it is about our willingness and our commitment to support Ukraine. And it would be a great mistake to think that our hesitance is the best way to de-escalation. I think vice versa. Our hesitance is the best way, direct way to escalation. If we would support Ukraine, if Ukraine would be more successful on the ground, then I think Putin would be pressed to go to negotiations table.
And for Norway, solid and constructive conversations are needed on Ukraine's invitation to join NATO. Speaking during a visit to Ukraine, Norway's Foreign Minister Espen Barth says the country welcomes Mr. Zelensky's victory plan and it will help develop conversations between Ukraine and its Western allies.
We welcome that plan. We think it helps develop a good conversation between Ukraine and its best friends. It's up to you, but it's also up to us. And how do you first win the war? But also, how do we ensure that after winning the war, there will be no more wars? How can we talk about security guarantees, NATO membership, and so on, to ensure that it stays like that? Norway's very clear position is that the future of Ukraine is in NATO, and that this must be part of a final plan. We have to have very solid, constructive conversation inside NATO and with Ukraine about the exact modalities. But there should be no doubt about it that Ukraine, as long as it wanted itself, and it definitely wants it, is welcome into NATO, and we have to make that part of a settlement. Because one thing is stopping this war in a way that Ukraine prevails, but we also need to ensure that there is not a new one a few years later.
Кремль розуміє лише мову силу. Саме тому план перемоги, який президент Володимир Зеленський представляє сьогодні.
Joining us now is foreign policy commentator Collins Nweke. He joins us from Brussels in Belgium. Thank you very much for joining us on the program. Well, it's another gathering of world leaders, members of the European Union in Brussels. Many are now wondering if this is yet just another gathering without results. What do you think will play out at this summit?
Yes, indeed, Anna. The EU summit is here with us again. And as a matter of fact, the focal point, like you mentioned, of this year's meeting is actually Ukraine. In this meeting, of course, the Ukrainian president will be presenting what he tagged, a plan to end the war with Russia. Now, any insinuation that this summit is a talk shop where much is said and nothing is achieved is actually misplaced, particularly when it comes to Ukraine. Let us remember that, but for the Western Alliance, particularly the EU and the United States, Ukraine would have been an easy walkover for Vladimir Putin of Russia, because that was essentially his plan. to go in there swiftly, make his way to Kiev, the capital, take it all over, and that will be it. In a week or even less, it would have been, done and dusted. But that's not the case. They are actually having to deal with quite, a lot of resistance, a lot of, pushback from Ukraine. Now, the war is far from over, and that is why he has, this plan to end the war. Now, before assessing the viability or the level of acceptance of the plan by the EU leaders, I think it's important to, have a clear understanding of what the Ukrainian president is asking for. There are basically 5 key points of, his request and 3 additional addendum, which he said is going to be discussed only with Ukrainian, friends and partners. Now, in the package, he is requesting for Ukraine to be invited to the NATO military alliance. Let's not forget that this was one of the reasons cited by Russia for actually, going into Ukraine to invade it. Now, second point is he is asking for the strengthening of Ukrainian defense against Russian forces. As we know, Russia has been making some incursions. And then number 3, he is requesting for a containment of Russia via a non-nuclear strategic deterrent package that will be deployed on Ukrainian soil. Second to the last request is a joint protection by the US and the EU of Ukraine's critical natural resources and joint use of their economic potential. And then finally, there is this request for the post-war period that is targeted at post-war period only. And, that has to do with replacing some of US troops stationed across Europe with Ukrainian soldiers. Now, some who look at this plan would say, to what extent is this really, a peace plan, a plan to actually win the war, to end the war? Because looking at, some of the points raised, some of the, requests, I believe that they are actually aimed at escalation. Escalation in the sense that, when you are requesting, for your strength to be built, to be more fortified against, your opponent, it does mean that you don't have confidence in the fact that, your opponent wants to board. So, the EU leaders who have spoken have shown support for this, but they are also saying that they need to understand more of what this plan contains in terms of details, and indeed, further negotiations would have to take place.
All right, but there appears to be so much support for Ukrainian President Zelensky's victory plan to end the ongoing war. Do you see Russia in any way coming to the negotiating table?
Well, Russia coming to the negotiating table is a dicey one. If we are to go by the immediate reaction of Russia, you will actually conclude that, the response to that is far from it. Russia isn't ready, based on, this victory plan to come to the negotiating table. But Ukraine's strategy appears to be, okay, we're not likely to get, the consent of Vladimir Putin of Russia. We're not going to get him to the negotiating table. And as a matter of fact, we don't even need him. We don't need Russia to actually push through this victory plan. All that he needs is the EU, to whom he's speaking, and then the United States. prior to this meeting, he's held, consultative sessions with Biden, President of the United States, but also were the two contenders for, the presidency of the United States, essentially, trying to show up, support for his plan. Now, you have to understand that without EU support, like, I mentioned earlier, Ukraine would have been, a territory of Russia by now. But that help continues to increase, and he continues to ask for more. Well, indeed, if at the end of the day there is an, adapted version of, the victory plan that everyone can live with, well, it means that the war is actually not ending today, but at least in the long run, it looks like, what the Ukrainian president is hoping for is a situation where Russia is actually beaten to submission. Submission in the sense that, the more they see how much strength that Ukraine has gathered, and the fact that, they are not likely to win the war, and Ukraine is not ready, far from it, to give up any of its territory, which is what Russia is, asking for. The moment that they see that, there is distress in the country, and economically they are going down, and their troops waning, that, they will then be forced to come to negotiate. But is that going to happen in the immediate? Far from it. So it's a long path to walk.
Well, we also know attention will be paid to the crisis in the Middle East. Nowhere is safe in Lebanon as we speak. Millions have already been displaced, and the war between Israel and Hamas also is in the picture. How much impact and significance can the EU summit have in ordering an immediate ceasefire in these regions?
Yes, indeed, Anna. Some attention is definitely being paid to the crisis in the Middle East with the Israeli, Palestinian war ongoing and escalating. There appear not to be peace anywhere anymore in the world, and I think what they will be looking at, critically is how best to continue to exercise pressure over Israel to stop the humanitarian crisis that is actually eating up, Gaza. The U.S. A couple of days ago actually sent a warning and ultimatum, a 30-day ultimatum. Now, do I see Europe following in the same line? Not necessarily, but I think they will use other strategies. I mean, if one or two countries, around the world have already done that, for instance, recognizing Palestine as a nation state and establishing, or taking steps to establish diplomatic relations with them, speaking out against Netanyahu. I believe France, one of the countries that came out, at the beginning of the war to solidly stand behind Israel, has now spoken out against Israel and calling it out in a major way. I believe that, it is likely that Europe, at the end of this summit, will come up with a joint statement with the aim of actually exercising more pressure on Netanyahu to take steps in actually ending this war, particularly the humanitarian toll that we have seen in Gaza. Exactly what that statement is going to be remains wait and see.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Collins Onweke, foreign policy commentator. Thanks for your time and your contribution on The World Today. It's just a few weeks to November 5 elections in the United States, but early votings have begun. Polls opened for early in-person voting in the U.S. swing state of North Carolina, including a mountainous area where thousands of potential voters still lack power and clean running water after Hurricane Helene's epic flooding. But earlier this week, voters filed dozens of lawsuits to ensure their ballots count. More than 400 locations in all the 100 counties are slated to open for the 17-day early vote period. Only 4 of 80 sites in the 25 Western countries hardest hit by that storm are not going to open. North Carolina could be crucial, experts say, in determining a winner in the race between the U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris, a Democrat, and former Republican President Donald Trump, because its voting preferences could swing either way. Polls show a very tight race with a handful of swing states likely to determine the winner. Maria Bird is our correspondent in the U.S. She joins us now from Washington, D.C. Hi, Maria. Thank you for joining us on the World's Day.
Hello.
Okay. Now, day after day, we're inching closer to November 5 election, but some people are already casting their ballots. We see in North Carolina, but how is this process going as we speak?
Well, this process is moving forward, and it is one that many people have been waiting for. Early voting is one of the largest turnouts that we have in the United States. And North Carolina, as we said, is a swing state, and it's one that both Vice President Harris and former President Donald Trump have been working hard to try to secure the vote for. So this is going to be quite historic.
Well, North Carolina now is, as we know, a presidential battleground state, and vast majority of people remember residents are still battling the devastating impact of the Hurricane Milton. Will this be an impediment to voting in any way?
Well, the hurricane definitely is one that people are a bit concerned about because obviously people are dealing with flooding and basic necessities, and it makes it very difficult for them to be able to get out to vote. And obviously at this time, as you said, with the 2 major hurricanes we've had, and specifically the damages that were secured in North Carolina and some of the regions that are even hard to access without any major weather conditions. So there's obviously lots of advocacy organizations, voter advocacy organizations that are going out to ensure these individuals do have access to the polls, which is why early voting starts so early, and oftentimes it goes until almost close to Election Day. So this is going to be a marathon to get people out to vote. This is not going to be a short turnaround process, especially, as you said, for those who are in regions and areas that have been impacted, and also those who are in hard-to-reach areas and communities.
All right, and the campaign train keeps moving for both candidates. Have you heard anything from Vice President Kamala Harris and former President Donald Trump in light of early voting starting already?
Well, they obviously are asking people to come out to vote. We know that the vice president was on Fox yesterday trying to really get those undecided voters. Oftentimes, those are independent or Republicans. So she's working that angle as well, and obviously very heavily working on the Black male population, trying to ensure that they also, too, fill a place within her campaign. Obviously, Donald Trump has been working very hard, diligently, especially speaking to those in rural communities. Oftentimes, those individuals are not seen within the campaign cycle. He's also been very clear on making sure that everyone has access to the ability to good wage jobs, being able to reduce some of the economic challenges that currently exist. And so that's going to speak to the heart of the American that is still struggling economically.
And just help us understand the reasoning behind early voting and how it is expected to work in the 2024 presidential election.
Early voting allows for people that might not have that day to be able to go out and vote. It also reduces the amount of lines that are incurred on the actual day of voting. It provides more avenues for individuals to get out to vote. And oftentimes on Election Day, you can only vote at specific polling sites. Typically, early voting gives you a wider variety and options of where you can go and vote. And so this is just a way to try to increase the number for voter participation.
All right, thank you very much. Our correspondent, Maria Bird, thanks a lot. We'll definitely be keeping our eyes on that election.
Thank you.
The Pentagon has launched what it calls precision strikes against 5 weapon storage locations in parts of Yemen controlled by the Houthi movement. U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin explained that U.S. forces, including long-range bombers, targeted underground facilities housing weapons components used to attack civilian and military ships in that region. According to the Defense Secretary, this operation shows that America's ability to target and take out facilities that opposing forces seek to keep out of reach. The U.S. Central Command, which oversees U.S. military operations in the Middle East, says that there are no initial indications of civilian casualties from this mission. Since last November, the Houthis have launched attacks on approximately 100 ships in the Red Sea and the Gulf of Aden, sinking 2 vessels. The group says the attacks are retaliation for Israel's military campaign in Gaza. And the U.S. says that it is monitoring Israel's action in northern Gaza to ensure it is not pursuing a policy of starvation. This was relayed by U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations, Linda Thomas-Greenfield, to the Security Council on Wednesday. She says Washington is watching to ensure Israel's occupation does not amount to starvation. Meanwhile, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has previously dismissed accusations that Israel was starving Gazans as an absurdity. And the U.S. State Department says that Israel has the right to target Hezbollah, even as it may be hiding in civilian buildings in Lebanon, but should do so in a way that protects civilians. Asked at a regular press briefing about Israeli airstrike that destroyed the municipal headquarters in the southern Lebanon town of Nabati, spokesperson Matthew Miller said that he could not comment on the specific strike, but he adds that the U.S. does not want to see civilian buildings destroyed.
So I've seen the footage. I cannot speak to what their intent was or what they were trying to accomplish, what their targets were. I don't know what they were. Obviously, we do not want to see entire villages destroyed. We don't want to see civilian homes destroyed. We don't want to see civilian buildings destroyed. We understand that Hezbollah does operate at times from underneath civilian homes, inside civilian homes. We've seen footage that has emerged over the course of the past 2 weeks of rockets and other military weapons held in civilian homes. So Israel does have a right to go after those legitimate targets, but they need to do so in a way that protects civilian infrastructure, protects civilians. So I can comment on an overall policy, and I can comment on a specific strike when we have verifiable information about what it is that happened, what they were trying to accomplish, whether they made a mistake or not, whether they accomplished their objective, whether their objective was a legitimate one. And obviously that varies from strike to strike. There are times, for example, with the World Central Kitchen strike, where we know obviously that they were striking civilian humanitarian workers, and it's very clear that something went terribly wrong. There are other instances where they strike a site where there are terrorists who are embedded there and there's civilian harm, and you have to ask questions about how that happened, whether they knew what they were doing. And then there are other strikes where the picture can be very mixed. So that's why it's always difficult to comment on individual strikes when you are in the fog of war and don't have always complete information. I can tell you as a general principle, of course we want to see civilians protected, and we want to see Israel do everything within its power to minimize civilian harm. That applies to Gaza. It applies to the war against Hezbollah as well.
Meanwhile, White House spokesperson Karine Jean-Pierre says that the United States has told Israel to oppose near-daily strikes in densely populated Beirut, and it was crucial that Israeli operations be conducted in a way that does not threaten civilian lives. The comments were made at a daily press briefing coming as more strikes continue in Beirut.
We have told Israel directly that we oppose any Israeli campaign to certainly of near daily strikes in densely populated area in Beirut. You are correct. That is something that we have been very clear about. We also understand that what they're conducting, the operations that they're conducting to destroy Hezbollah infrastructure is targeted. And so we'll continue to have those conversations with the Israeli government, and that is something that we will continue to do. And we have been really clear. It is critical. It is critical that these operations be conducted in a way that does not threaten the lives of civilians. Conversations that we will continue to have with the Israeli government. And let's not forget UN peacekeepers and also members of the Lebanese armed forces. And so we've been clear. We're going to continue to have those diplomatic discussions with Israelis.
Bangladesh's International Crimes Tribunal has issued an arrest warrant for former Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina, citing her alleged involvement in the mass killings during violent protests that erupted earlier this year. The protest, which began as a student-led movement against public sector job quotas, escalated into some of the deadliest unrest since the country's independence in 1971, resulting in over 700 deaths and numerous injuries. The violence ultimately forced Ms. Hasina to flee to India on August the 5th, and an interim government led by Nobel Peace Laureate Muhammad Yunus took charge of the country. North Korea's constitution now defines the South as a hostile state. And that's according to the country's state media. In the first peek, it's offering the public into Pyongyang's recent constitutional revisions. State newspaper reported the change as an inevitable and legitimate measure as a time when tensions between the Koreas are at the highest point in years. On Tuesday, North Korea blew up roads and railways connecting it to the south, a move which state media described as part of a step-by-step implementation to thoroughly separate the Koreas. The United Nations Global Impact 2023 reports that approximately 2.78 million workers worldwide lose their lives due to occupational accidents and work-related diseases. In response to this urgent crisis, South Africa's Department of Employment and Labour has now launched the Occupational Health and Safety Prevention Accord, an OHS strategy in Johannesburg, South Africa. Channels Television's reporter Innocent Samosa was there unfolding this report.
The event themed collaboration and strategic approach to prevent and reduce incidents and occupational diseases in workplace brought together key stakeholders from government, labor and business to address critical issues in occupational health and safety. Millie Reithers is the Chief Inspector responsible for occupational health and safety nationally.
The burden of disease as well as injuries and diseases is too high for us to be spending so much money related to injuries and diseases, but also over and above that, there are workers' lives, workers' health and safety that are impacted when we do not prevent injuries and diseases.
Some labor unions says that while there's progress made, much more still needs to be done.
First of all, employing more inspectors. I think the current number of inspectors is inadequate to reach out to all the workplaces where there is safety issues. And also I think the law enforcement agencies are not serious when it comes to enforcing these practices, and enforcing the health and safety laws.
Meanwhile, the General Secretary of the South African Federation of Trade Union, Zweli Nzimavavi, underscores some improvements made since the dawn of democracy.
Massive improvement if you compare it, the statistics to the period before 1993, 1994. The pieces of legislation have really played a tremendous role, but way still to go.
Acting Director of Social Policy at Business Unity South Africa, Sanelisiwe Yankees, says this collaboration between government, labor and business is a step in the right direction.
It's incredible. It is sticking with the tenets of how we do business, and we're talking about tripartism, social dialogue, collaboration, and without it, I'm quite sure we wouldn't have been here today with respect to the signing of this accord and the strategy, but also making grand plans as to how we as social partners, alongside with the state, intend on implementing it.
Now, some of the challenges that attendees anticipate in implementing this in different sectors is legislation and passing laws, but some believe that this is a step in the right direction in order to deal with the injuries and diseases in the workplace. From Pretoria, South Africa, Innocent Samosa, Channels Television News.
Sadly, former One Direction singer Payne has died after falling from the third floor of a hotel balcony in Buenos Aires. Former One Direction singer was found dead outside the hotel there from the balcony accelerating, and according to Argentine police, a preliminary autopsy suggests he died from external and internal bleeding injuries. Earlier, in a statement, the police said that they were called to the hotel in the capital's leafy Palermo neighborhood, where they were notified of an aggressive man who could be under the effects of drugs and alcohol. The statement adds the hotel manager said he heard a loud noise at the back of the hotel, and when police arrived, they found that a man had fallen from the balcony of his room. Tributes have since been pouring in as the British Parliament offered their condolences, calling the death a tragic end.
Send condolences to the friends and family of Liam Payne. One Direction was loved by millions across the world, and this was a tragic end for someone so young.
Meanwhile, London residents have also been expressing their shock and their sadness following the death of the 31-year-old, calling it a very sad day for the country. One Direction was ranked the third greatest boy band of all time by Entertainment Weekly back in 2024, this year 2024. According to Celebrity Net Worth, Payne's One Direction and his solo career helped garner a net worth of $70 million.
To be honest, it's quite sad because I grew up with One Direction and he's kind of similar to my age, and he was also a dad. I'm a mom of 2 boys. To be honest, don't really understand fully what happened. It says that he fell off the balcony, and I hope it wasn't, you know, I hope it was a quick death for him, but it was horrible. The entire thing's horrible, and when he's our generation and you grew up with him, it's just been a really sad and ominous day, I think, since hearing about the news.
I thought it was incredibly sad for his child, basically, and I think that what those boys... I think the fame at such a young age is a very, very difficult thing, and I think that those boys have managed it in different ways, and so I thought it was very, very sad, and I was thinking of his ex-partners who have had a very difficult time recently, and of his child.
He was so young, I think 31, and I just turned 30 earlier in the year, and I just feel like that's so young to just be gone. So I hope they find out more information, and it's just so sad. I'm sure there's a lot of really sad girls in London today and across the world.
It was really shocking. I don't know, it just happens. And it was like, yeah, it was a shock when I read the news and heard about it from others.
Oh, that's indeed sad and shocking. Our prayers are with him and the family. And that's it on The World Today. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Anne Nwawide.